Alright, as promised, here we are in the studio at my house. First I'm going to do a rundown of where everyone's set up when we jam, and then talk about how we record. But first, let's get into the details of the drums, the most important part. Okay, so walking in the studio, we have Matt set up, which is a Viper head with a Korg tuner built into the head, which I thought was pretty cool, and a Carvin cab, 4x12 slanted, and then a Harbinger PA system, which we use as a mixer live, and then we also use as our speakers when we're mixing in Cubase on the computer. The speakers for the PA are wired over to each side of me, so I can hear Matt while he's singing when we're playing live. And then over here we have Chris's setup, which is a PV Valve King head and a PV 4x12 slanted cab, which sounds killer with this new overdrive pedal he got. And Scotty's setup isn't here, but it would be sitting in this area, pointed at me, so I could hear both Chris and Scott while they're playing. So I could hear through these gun muffles I wear while I play. So starting right to left, I have this Orange County 14 inch by 5.5 snare, which is absolutely gorgeous stain on it. The reason I didn't use the Pearl Forum snare is because that snare almost had a ting to it, and that's not a sound I want when we're playing heavier songs. So once in a while I'll bring out the Pearl Forum snare, and I have the head on there tabletop tight, so it's like a mix between a piccolo and a regular snare. But this one's nice and fat sounding, has great attack, and it releases immediately, so it's absolutely perfect. Moving on, I have a 12, 14, and 16 inch toms, which is pretty standard with any kit. I have Evans G2, which are 2-ply clear heads on there, which are great because they keep the tone and they have attack, but they don't sound like subwoofers, which is the same with the bass drum there. I just scared my dogs. Shut up. Moving on to the cymbals, my hats, I have 14-inch Paiste PST3s, which are nice and bright, have great stick definition, which I need because I like to do a lot of hi-hat patterns. But also when you open them up, they wash out and they can sound really heavy, which is great when you're playing like a jazz and metal influenced songs. I need something that's versatile without taking up too much space. Instead of having two hats, I found these, and these are killer. Moving on, I have a 10-inch Zildjian Transformer, which is almost like a China, but it's a little trashier sounding as an accent piece, and it's absolutely great when I'm trying to do maybe hi-hat patterns, or if I'm riding on the stack over here, I can come over to this and throw in accents without getting too bright like the Splash would do. The Splash, I have an 8-inch B8X Sabian Splash, which is nice and bright. I normally only use it if I'm doing hi-hat patterns and I want to accent between beats or on the upbeats, or etc. But it's, I think I spent like $60 on it. I couldn't pass it up. It's a little dented, but B8X is the cheap metal that Sabian sells, so I'm happy with it for the price, definitely. Moving on, the ZBT Zildjian Crash. I think it's a 16-inch. Originally, when I bought this set, I bought a complete set of the ZBTs because they're pretty cheap. I think they were like $400 for like 5 cymbals, so that wasn't a deal I could pass up. And they sounded great live until we started recording. Then we realized that although all the ZBT cymbals have different tones when you're playing live, they wash out at about the same frequency. So when I'm playing a heavy part where I have a 16 and I had an 18-inch, and I would do a pattern between the two while doing maybe a double bass pattern rather, they would wash out each other completely in the mix, and it would almost wash out the drums, and it just wasn't working out. It wasn't showing the patterns I was trying to do in the mix. So I ended up replacing the 18-inch ZBT Crash that I had, and I got a Paiste Rude Thin Crash 18 inches. This Crash ended up being a perfect choice. It was kind of impulsive, but I'm glad I did it because this Crash is pretty dark, but it's not as dark as maybe a Meinl Byzance would be. It's dark enough to where this is very, very different than the ZBT, which is a bright crash in the mix. But it still has wash to it, and it still has character, and I can still ride on it during a heavy part, and it still has character. Moving on, I have underneath here, I have a Meinl Generation X filter china, which is Thomas Lang's signature china. And I liked the china by itself decently. I mean, it almost had like a bell ring to it, and that's what I didn't like about it. But I did want the utility of a china or a stack, so I kept the cymbal. And when I realized the ZBTs weren't working for me in the mix, I decided to take my 14-inch ZBT Crash and stack it on top of the Meinl china, which creates, I mean, basically all it did was get rid of the ring of the china by itself, and now it has that nice sharp attack that a stack does without having to replace the whole cymbal, really. And I have a 502 Paiste 20-inch ride. This ride, I think, is from the 90s or the 80s. I bought it used from Guitar Center, and I was skeptical, but it was a Paiste ride that was decently cheap, and I knew that 502s were a fairly bright version of the Paiste cymbals, and that's what I like. I play when I do my heavy drumming. Normally, I go over to the darker crashes and the stack, and but when I'm doing excuse me, when I'm doing maybe like a double beat pattern, double bass beat, I don't want something that's so dark that it's going to get lost in the mix. So having the 502, it's very bright. It washes out well, but it doesn't become a crash if you end up riding on it for a long time, which is great for me because I like ride patterns. I like to do ride patterns I like to do patterns between the ride and the hi-hat. And they're both bright sounding, but they both have great stick definition. And that's one thing I'll say about Paiste is if you ride on one of their cymbals, it's not going to wash out and become a crash, which I absolutely love that. Moving on to the hardware, I have an Iron Cobra double pedal, which is, I mean, it's the best pedal you can have for the money. I had to have the guy at Guitar Center build it into a left-handed pedal. I'm a left-handed drummer, which actually broke my warranty, unfortunately, but for the price, it's the absolute best pedal you can get for around $300. Other than that, I have a Rhythm Tech tambourine, which I almost never use. PDP hardware, just because it was cheap. I think I have a Sonar stand right there, and my hardware is random. I think this might be Latin percussion. I'm not sure. Oh, and then here we go. I bought cups from Salvation Army for like 50 cents, and I drilled a hole and then zip tied it to my stand so I can have a stick holder. So when I have a bunch of good sticks, I stick them all in here so I can, instead of having a bag on my tom like I used to, now I have this so I can switch to my dominant hand, which is my left hand, and keep the rhythm, and then grab the stick with my non-dominant hand while I'm playing and keep the backbeat going. Onto the miking, I bought a Shure, I think it's called a P Drum Kit 7, something along those lines. It's a $500 set of mics, but they sound great, and I can't speak well enough about Shure. I mean, for the price, you cannot beat it. On the snare, I have a PGA 57, which is pretty standard. I would like to get one of those rebuilt ones specifically for snares that can mount, and they have a 90-degree turn instead of having a straight mic and then a boom going through my hi-hat and my splashes. But that'll be in the future. Moving on, there's PGA 56s on the toms. And yeah, they're all the same. PGA 56s on the toms. They have great definition. They have really good low end for being tom mics, which is nice because I can sweep what I don't want and still retain that low end. And then finally, the bass drum mic, which is a dynamic mic. Let's see if we can find the name of it. PGA 52, I should have known that. I have a PGA 52 on the bass drum. With bass drum miking, what you'll find out with these holes in your resonant head is that if you stick it inside here, you get more punch. If you stick it inside the hole and direct it right at the batter head, you'll get more punch in your kick drum miking. If you bring it outside, you'll get more resonance, so it'll sound more like a subwoofer. So I like to go right in the middle. I like to line up like the mesh of the mic right with the hole. So I get some of that low end that I want, but I also point the mic directly at my beaters on the batter head so I can get that punch and still maintain that low end kick. Up here we have condenser mics for the room mics. I'm only running one right now just because my cymbals tend to wash everything out in this small room. And all of this is wired up. All of my drum mics is wired up, sent out to these cords. And then we use this handy recorder, which is a Zoom H6, as an audio interface, which is a great option because really this is made for like DLSRs, like people that go out and record things live and need a good live mixer. But what we do is we use the USB port, we plug right into the computer here and run Cubase. And there's actually an option on here to run it as an interface with multiple tracks. So instead of using a couple $1,000 interface, we're able to use a $500 interface directly into Cubase, which is incredible. Well, that's basically it for the drums and the mics. You know, it's not the most expensive equipment in the world, but I am proud of it. Busted my butt to get it. Collectively, we have thousands of dollars worth of equipment in here, and hopefully we can use it to the best of our ability. Right now, we have 2 songs on Facebook. Well, through Bandcamp, Memories in the Door. Those are both raw demos. They're EQ'd very little, and none of us are engineers, so that's the best sound that we can get. Hopefully in the future we'll be able to afford to go to a cool studio that's local, like Metro 37, and get some real, get some mastered songs out. But as of right now, with the equipment that we have, we're absolutely proud of what we're able to put out, and hopefully we can keep progressing, and hopefully we can keep building a fan base of people. I mean, we were online for 12 hours and had 36 people liking the page, and 155 listens to our songs within 12 hours, which is great for a band that's never played live, and we were 2 months old. So, you know, thank you to everybody that's come to our page and liked it, and you know, anyone that wants to interact with us and tell us what you do or don't like about our music, you're more than welcome. We want to hear feedback because we're biased. We wrote the songs. We want to know what you guys think, what we should or shouldn't do. So, other than that, I hope you enjoyed the video. I mean, that's our equipment and that's what I use. I think I'm gonna do a drum playthrough. Maybe I'll do it raw, and then with mics, and then with miking and with a little bit of EQing, so you can see the difference between it and see that it's worth the $500 in equipment that we have just in recording. So yeah, give us a like, share our page. If you like our music, let us know. If you hate it, don't come back.